Good evening, all, and welcome back to Dark Fears. Tonight, we travel into the forgotten corners of Pennsylvania, where isolated small towns sit at the frozen heart of endless wilderness, places where help does not reach, and secrets are buried deep beneath quiet streets. Across 7 disturbing true stories, ordinary lives unravel after encounters so terrifying, so real, they continue to haunt those who survived them. These are not legends or campfire tales. These are real documented encounters from ordinary people, from abandoned farmhouses to basements hiding impossible secrets, from unexplained disappearances to things that should not exist. Tonight, you will hear horrors that refuse to stay buried. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe to Dark Fears for daily true horror content that will keep you up at night. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when the darkness calls. Now, let us step into the shadows of Pennsylvania, where civilization ends and terror begins. My name is Marcus Webb, and I used to work as a building inspector for the state of Pennsylvania. In March of 2019, I received an unusual assignment: inspect an abandoned house on the outskirts of Centralia, the town that's been burning underground since 1962. Most of Centralia is a ghost town now, with only a handful of residents refusing to leave. The house I was sent to assess sat on the eastern edge, where the coal fires hadn't reached yet. Or so we thought. The property owner had died 6 months earlier, and distant relatives wanted to sell. Standard procedure required a safety inspection before any transaction. I drove out on a gray Tuesday morning, the kind of day where the sky and ground seemed to merge into one colorless void. As I approached Centralia, I noticed the familiar warning signs: cracked roads, steam rising from fissures in the earth, dead vegetation in perfect circles. The house itself was a 2-story colonial, paint peeling, shutters hanging loose. Nothing remarkable, except for the smell. Even from my truck, I could detect something wrong. Not smoke, not decay. Something else entirely. I grabbed my equipment and approached the front door. The key the lawyer gave me stuck in the lock, and I had to force it. The door opened with a groan that seemed to come from deep within the house itself. Inside, the air was thick, not with dust, but with something heavier, almost liquid. My flashlight beam seemed to struggle through it. The main floor was what you'd expect. Outdated furniture covered in sheets, family photos on the mantel showing people I'd never know. But everything was arranged too perfectly. No signs of the hurried evacuation you'd expect from Centralia. No half-packed boxes, no abandonment, just waiting. The floorboards creaked as I moved through the living room toward the kitchen. That's when I noticed the basement door. It was newer than everything else in the house, heavy steel with 3 deadbolts, all locked from the outside. My inspection didn't technically require checking the basement, but something about that door nagged at me. Why would someone install industrial-grade security on a basement door? I found the keys on a hook nearby, each labeled in careful handwriting: top, middle, bottom. The locks opened with smooth clicks that shouldn't have been possible after months of disuse. Someone had maintained them. Recently. The door swung open to reveal wooden stairs descending into absolute darkness. My flashlight couldn't reach the bottom. I should have left then. Every instinct screamed at me to close that door, lock it, and report the house as unsafe. But curiosity, or something else, pulled me forward. The stairs groaned under my weight. Halfway down, I realized the temperature was rising, not falling. Basements should be cold. This one grew warmer with each step, and that smell intensified. copper and salt and something organic I couldn't identify. At the bottom, my flashlight revealed a concrete floor, walls lined with old shelves. Normal basement things, paint cans, tools, boxes. But in the center of the room sat a chair, just one, facing the far wall. And on that chair, someone had left a tape recorder, the kind with the big reels from the 1970s. It was plugged into an outlet, its power light glowing red in the darkness. Next to it, a piece of paper with 2 words, written in the same careful handwriting from upstairs. "Play me." My hand shook as I reached for the play button. The reels began to turn, and after a moment of tape hiss, a man's voice emerged. Elderly, strained, terrified. "My name is Robert Kensington. If you're hearing this, I'm dead. And you need to leave this house immediately. Don't go deeper into the basement. There's another room, behind the shelf on the east wall. I sealed it. I thought I sealed it well enough. But if you're down here, if you found this recorder, then the locks have failed. Then it's working its way out." The recording crackled. I heard breathing that didn't match the rhythm of speech. Heavy, wet. In 1973, I was a mining engineer, part of the team trying to stop the Centralia fire. We dug exploratory tunnels, looking for ways to contain it. We found something else. A cavity. Natural formation, we thought. But when we broke through, it wasn't empty. There was something living in the heat, something that had been there long before the coal, before the town, before Pennsylvania was Pennsylvania. The old man's voice continued, sometimes breaking into sobs. "We tried to seal that cavity, collapsed the tunnel, poured concrete. But 3 of my crew never made it out. We heard them screaming for days through the rock. Not screaming for help, screaming for us to run. When the screaming stopped, we thought it was over. But I knew it had taken them, changed them, used them. I bought this house because it sits directly above where we found that cavity. I spent 50 years keeping watch, keeping it contained. But I'm dying now. Cancer. The irony isn't lost on me, and I can feel it getting stronger. It knows I'm weak. Static consumed the tape for several seconds. Then, if you're hearing this, check the shelf. Look at the concrete behind it. If you see cracks, if you see movement, run. Don't try to understand. Don't try to fight it. Just run and pray it doesn't follow you into the light." The tape ended. Silence filled the basement, broken only by my own breathing. I should have listened, should have run. But I turned toward the east wall. The shelf was old but sturdy, filled with mason jars containing things I didn't want to examine closely. I pulled it away from the wall, and my flashlight revealed what Robert Kensington had feared. The concrete wasn't just cracked. It was breathing. I know how that sounds. But I watched it expand and contract, slow and rhythmic, like the wall itself had lungs. The cracks weren't random fractures. They formed a pattern, almost like a handprint, a massive handprint with 6 fingers. Heat radiated from those cracks, and with it came that smell amplified 1,000 times. I could taste it now, coating my tongue with copper and rot. Something moved behind the concrete. I heard it scraping, shifting, repositioning itself, getting closer to the surface, getting ready. Then I heard the voice, not from the tape recorder, not from anywhere physical. It spoke directly inside my skull in a language I shouldn't have understood but did. It said, "Finally, the Watcher is gone. The seal weakens. You will open it. You will let us breathe again." My hand moved toward the crack without my permission. I watched my own fingers reaching out, unable to stop them. The heat intensified until I could smell my own flesh beginning to cook. Something inside me snapped back to awareness. I jerked my hand away and stumbled backward, crashing into the chair. The tape recorder fell, and the impact made it play again. But this time, the voice was different. Younger, desperate, not Robert Kensington. "Dad, if you're listening, it's me. It's Thomas. I know what you've been guarding. I know what you found in '73. I read your journals. And Dad, I think I know what it is." The old mining records mention Native American warnings about this area. They called it the breathing stone. Said it was the corpse of something that existed before the world cooled. Something that fell from the sky when the earth was still molten. It's been down there for millions of years, Dad, sleeping in the heat. But it's waking up. The coal fire is feeding it, making it strong again. The voice paused. I heard crying. I went down there, Dad. Last week while you were in the hospital. I found the tunnel behind the basement. It's not sealed anymore. The concrete is gone. There's just a hole now and stairs going down. Stairs that shouldn't exist. I only went down 3 steps before I saw them. The miners. The 3 men who didn't make it out in '73. They're still alive, Dad. Still moving. But they're not human anymore. The tape continued. Their skin is black and cracked like coal, and there's light underneath. Red light, like they're burning from the inside. They're building something down there, Dad. A structure. A doorway, I think. And they kept saying the same thing over and over. The Watcher is dying. Soon we open. Soon we all breathe together. The recording degraded into static, then silence. But in that silence, I heard new sounds coming from behind the wall. Footsteps, multiple sets, shuffling up those impossible stairs, getting closer. I ran. God help me. I abandoned every protocol and sprinted for those basement stairs. Behind me, I heard concrete crumbling, a massive exhalation of heat and ancient breath. The lights in the basement flickered on by themselves. I hadn't even known there were lights. Revealing the wall collapsing inward, 3 figures emerged from the darkness beyond. Tall, twisted, moving in that stuttering way that stop-motion animation captures but real life shouldn't allow. I took the stairs 3 at a time, burst through the steel door, and slammed it behind me. But those deadbolts, the ones I'd unlocked so carefully, they were already open, all 3, unlocked from the inside. I made it to my truck and drove. I didn't stop driving until I reached Harrisburg, 2 hours away. I called my supervisor and told him the house was structurally unsound, contaminated by the coal fire, and needed to be condemned immediately. I didn't mention the basement, I didn't mention the recording or what I'd seen. That was 18 months ago. The house was condemned, but never demolished. I checked satellite images obsessively. The house is still there, but the ground around it has changed. The dead zones, the perfect circles where nothing grows, they're spreading. And they're all connected now, forming a pattern. From above, it looks like something is reaching up through the earth. Something with 6 fingers on each hand. I've tried to forget. Tried to convince myself it was carbon monoxide poisoning, hallucinations from underground gases. But 3 weeks ago, I started receiving emails. No sender, no subject line, just attachments, audio files. When I play them, I hear breathing, heavy, wet. And underneath that breathing, voices counting down in a language that predates English. Yesterday, the countdown reached 7. Today, it's 6. I'm writing this because the countdown will reach 0 soon. And because yesterday I saw them. I was getting coffee, and in the reflection of the shop window, I saw 3 figures standing behind me. Tall, cracked skin glowing with internal fire. When I turned around, nothing was there. But I felt the heat. I smelled the copper and salt. Robert Kensington kept watch for 50 years. His son tried to warn him. And I opened the locks. I broke the seal just by being there, by letting my curiosity override my fear. The house in Centralia is still standing. The basement is still there. And those stairs go down much farther than any basement should. If you ever find yourself near Centralia, if you see that house with a steel door, don't go inside. Don't unlock those deadbolts, because something ancient is climbing those stairs. Something that has waited millions of years to breathe our air again. And it's counting down to the day it finally breaks through. The emails still come. This morning, the count was 1. Tomorrow, I expect it will reach 0. And I don't know what opens when it does. My name is David Restrepo, and until 6 months ago, I worked as a home health aide in rural Bradford County. The job wasn't glamorous, helping elderly patients with daily tasks, administering medications, providing companionship. But it paid well, and most of my clients were kind people who just needed someone to check in on them. Most of them. Then I was assigned to Harold Vance's property, and I learned that some houses don't want to let you leave. Harold lived alone in a farmhouse 15 miles outside Towanda, surrounded by 200 acres of unused farmland. The house was built in 1887, according to county records, and had stayed in the Vance family ever since. Harold was 83, recovering from a stroke that had left him partially paralyzed. The agency warned me he was difficult, their polite code for mean. But difficult clients paid the same as pleasant ones, so I took the assignment. The first thing I noticed when I arrived was the smell. Every old house has an odor, but this was different. Organic, living, like being inside something's mouth. The second thing I noticed was that every door in the house was open. Every single one. Including closets, cabinets, even the refrigerator stood slightly ajar. Harold was waiting in the living room, slumped in a wheelchair, his good eye tracking me as I entered. His face was twisted from the stroke, but his mind was sharp. Too sharp. "You'll want to leave," he said without preamble. They all do. "But you signed a contract, didn't you? 30 days minimum." I introduced myself and started my assessment, trying to maintain professionalism. The house was cluttered, but not filthy. Everything seemed normal except for those open doors. When I tried to close the bathroom door for privacy, Harold's voice cracked like a whip from the living room. "Don't close that door." I froze, hand on the doorknob. "Mr. Vance, I just need no doors closed, ever. That's the rule. That's how we stay safe." His voice dropped to something between a whisper and a growl. "The house needs to breathe." Over the next few days, I learned Harold's routine. Medication at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Meals prepared from a very specific list, nothing with strong odors. And absolutely, under no circumstances, was I to close any door in the house, not even at night. The first week passed uneventfully, though I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Not by Harold, but by the house itself. On my 8th night, I was staying over 3 nights a week. I woke at 2 a.m. to a sound I couldn't identify. Not footsteps, not wind. Something rhythmic. Breathing. Deep, slow inhalations and exhalations coming from somewhere below me. The house was single-story, no basement. Yet the breathing came from beneath my bedroom floor. I lay frozen in bed, listening. The breathing synchronized with something else, the house itself expanding and contracting. I could feel it in the mattress, see it in the way the walls seemed to shift infinitely subtly in the darkness. The whole structure was moving like a massive lung. In the morning, I asked Harold about it. His face went rigid. "You heard it," he said flatly. "Then it's noticed you. Happens faster with some people than others." He wheeled himself to the window, looking out at the empty fields. My grandfather told me the house was built on top of something. A sinkhole, they thought. But when they dug the foundation, they found something else. A cavity in the earth. Natural formation, but wrong somehow. The walls were smooth, geometric, like something had carved them deliberately. "What was in it?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "Nothing. That was the problem. It was empty. But it shouldn't have been. Air doesn't stay still like that. Air moves, circulates. But down in that cavity, the air was waiting." Harold continued. "My grandfather built the house anyway, sealed that cavity under the foundation. Within a year, strange things started happening. Doors would slam shut on their own. People would get trapped in rooms, locked in from the outside, even though there were no locks. They'd suffocate. 3 people died that way before my grandfather figured it out." "Figured what out?" "The house is breathing through that cavity, like a lung connected to something deeper, much deeper. When you close doors, you block its airways. It doesn't like that, it suffocates. And when it suffocates, it takes air from somewhere else. From the rooms, from your lungs." His good eye fixed on me with terrible intensity. "Keep the doors open, and it breathes normally. Close them, and it breathes through you." I should have quit right then. But Harold doubled my pay on the spot. Said he'd had 17 aides in the past 2 years, and none lasted more than 2 weeks. He needed consistency. He needed someone who could handle the truth. I agreed. "God help me," I agreed. That night, I understood what he meant about the house breathing. I woke gasping, my lungs burning. Every door in the house had somehow swung partially closed, not shut but narrowed. And the breathing from below had become labored, raspy, desperate. I ran through the house, pushing doors open, and with each one my lungs loosened. The house exhaled with relief. After that night, I became obsessive about the doors. I'd walk through the house every hour, checking, ensuring they remained open. Harold watched me with something like pity. "It gets worse," he said during one of my rounds. "The house is old. It's learned. Every generation, it needs more air. My father had to remove all the interior doors in the 1960s. Just took them off the hinges. But even that wasn't enough eventually. The house wants more. More what? More access, more openings. It wants to breathe through everything." He gestured weakly at the walls. "Why do you think the paint is always peeling? Why the wallpaper never stays? The house is trying to shed its skin, to open itself completely." I noticed something else. There were marks on the walls. Not damage, deliberate cuts, shallow incisions forming patterns. When I traced them with my finger, I realized they outlined spaces where doors used to be, doors that had been sealed over. The house was remembering its old airways, marking them like phantom limbs. On my 15th night, I woke to find Harold's wheelchair in my doorway. Empty. I jumped up, calling for him, and found him on the floor in the hallway. He'd fallen trying to open a closet door that had drifted shut. "Help me," he gasped. "Have to open it. Can't breathe." I pulled the closet door open and helped Harold back into his wheelchair. He was gray, sweating, gasping like he'd run a marathon. "It's getting stronger," he wheezed. "Started after you came. Fresh lungs. It wants fresh lungs." "What do you mean?" "Every time someone new stays here, the house improves, breathes easier. It's learning from us, from our breathing, trying to match our rhythm." His good eye was wild now. "My wife died here in 1998. Emphysema, the doctor said. But I knew. I knew the house took her breathing. Studied it, incorporated it. After she died, the breathing sounds changed, became wet, labored, like she'd sounded at the end. I started packing immediately. Harold didn't try to stop me. But when I reached the front door, it wouldn't open. Not stuck. It opened inward easily enough. But there was something beyond it. Not the porch, not the outside world. Just darkness. Solid darkness that pressed back when I reached into it. "That's new," Harold said from behind me. His voice was resigned. "It's never done that before. Never sealed the outside completely. I tried every door and window on the ground floor. Same result. Beyond every opening, impenetrable darkness. The house had closed itself off from the world. We were trapped inside its breathing body. There's one room we haven't talked about," Harold said quietly. "Upstairs. The house is single story. Look at the ceiling." I did. And for the first time, I noticed the seams. A hidden attic entrance, painted over so many times, it was almost invisible. But there. Definitely there. My grandfather sealed that room in 1891, 4 years after building the house. Whatever was up there, whatever he found, he decided it was better locked away. The rule was simple. Never open that room. Never give the house access to it again. Harold's face was grim. But the house has been working on it. Every year the seal weakens, the paint cracks. And now, with us trapped, I think it wants us to open it. I think that's the only way out. We had no tools, no ladder. But desperation is its own tool. I stacked furniture, chairs, tables, Harold directing from below. When I reached the attic entrance, I found the paint already cracking, falling away in chunks. The wood underneath was carved with symbols I didn't recognize. Warnings, probably. I pushed up on the door. It opened easily, too easily, like it had been waiting. The smell that poured out was indescribable. Not decay, not age. Something older. Something that reminded me of deep caves and ocean trenches and places where light has never reached. I pulled myself up into the attic. My flashlight beam revealed a space that was impossible. The attic was larger than the house itself. It stretched in all directions, far beyond where the walls should be. And it was full of doors, hundreds of them, thousands. Standing upright with no walls between them, just frames and doors extending into darkness like a forest of portals. Every single door was closed, and every single door was breathing, expanding outward with inhalations, contracting with exhalations. They moved in perfect synchronization, a massive respiratory system of wood and hinges. In the center of this forest of doors stood something else. Not a door, a hole in the floor. The original cavity Harold's grandfather had found. But it had changed. The edges were no longer stone. They were lined with something that looked like tissue. Wet, pulsing. The house hadn't been built on top of something. It had been built around something. Something that was still growing. "David?" Harold's voice floated up from below, weak and distant. "David, what do you see?" I couldn't answer, because I just realized something terrible. All these doors, every single one, they were exits. Possible ways out. Different versions of the front door, the back door, the windows. every opening the house had ever considered, and they were all sealed. The house had been collecting possibilities, gathering them here, keeping them closed. A voice spoke, not from any direction, from inside my chest, from my own lungs. Finally, someone who understands. The house is not haunted. The house is the haunt. I am not trapped here. I am here, growing, spreading, one breath at a time. I felt it then, the thing beneath the house. It wasn't a cavity. It was a lung, a massive, ancient lung that had been breathing long before Harold's grandfather found it. The house was just the rib cage it had built around itself. And we, everyone who had ever lived here, died here, breathed here, we were teaching it, showing it how human breath worked, how human lungs functioned. Every breath you take, I learn. Every door you open, I understand. And soon, I will have learned enough. I will breathe not through wood and nails, but through skin and bone. I will walk out of this place wearing lungs I've built from all of you. I ran for the nearest door in that impossible attic, grabbed the handle. It was warm, alive, but I pulled it open anyway. Beyond it, Harold's living room. But wrong. The furniture was breathing. The walls were expanding and contracting. Everything had become part of the respiratory system. I jumped down through the hole, landed hard. Harold was gone. His wheelchair sat empty. But I could hear breathing from inside it. The cushions were moving, rising and falling. The house had taken him, absorbed him, made him part of its breathing. I found one door still connected to reality. The basement door, the one place Harold had never mentioned. The one room I'd never seen. I opened it and descended into absolute darkness. At the bottom, I found not a basement, but an ending. The original cavity, the lung. Massive, organic, breathing with a rhythm that made my heart synchronize against my will. And I understood. The only way out was through it. Through the lung, into it. I had to let it breathe through me completely. Become part of its respiratory system. Stop resisting. So I did. I walked into that pulsing darkness. Let it fill my lungs. Let it breathe me instead of me breathing it. I woke up outside the house 3 days later. Paramedics found me in the field. No memory of how I got there. The house was empty. Harold's body was discovered in his wheelchair. Cause of death listed as natural, respiratory failure. But here's what they don't know. I can still feel it. Every breath I take, part of it belongs to that thing. I'm connected to it now. A remote lung, an extension. And sometimes, when I'm sleeping, I wake up to find all the doors in my apartment standing open, and I hear breathing from underneath my floor. The house is still learning, and I'm teaching it how to breathe in the outside world. One day, it will have learned enough, and then it will emerge. We should have never built anything on top of it. We should have let it sleep. My name is Emma Hartley, and I'm a religious studies doctoral student at Penn State. In August 2021, I received a research grant to study dying rural churches in Pennsylvania. Specifically, how communities adapt when their religious institutions collapse. That research led me to Shepherdstown, population 247, tucked in the mountains of Somerset County. The town had 3 churches for those 247 people. Or it used to. Now it has one. And after what I discovered there, I understand why the other 2 closed. I arrived on a Sunday morning, planning to attend services at the only remaining church. Shepherdstown Community Church, a white clapboard building dating back to 1843. The pastor, Reverend Marcus Thorne, had agreed to an interview afterward. The town itself was beautiful in that melancholy way dying places often are. Pristine historic buildings, manicured lawns, but hardly any people. No children playing, no cars on the street. Just silence and the distant sound of church bells. As I approached the church, I noticed something odd. Every house I passed had its curtains drawn. Every single one. And in several windows, I caught glimpses of faces, residents watching me walk by. But the moment I looked directly at them, they vanished behind the fabric. The church was fuller than I expected. Maybe 60 people, a quarter of the town's population. But something was immediately wrong. Everyone was wearing the same expression, not smiling, not solemn, blank, perfectly, identically blank. They sat motionless in the pews, hands folded in their laps, staring straight ahead at the pulpit. No one acknowledged my entrance. No welcoming smiles, no curious glances at the stranger. I took a seat in the back row, my academic instincts already screaming that I'd stumbled into something far more interesting than church attendance statistics. Reverend Thorne emerged from a side door. He was younger than his voice had sounded on the phone, maybe 40, with intense dark eyes and movements that were just slightly too precise, too measured. He stepped up to the pulpit and stood there in complete silence for a full minute. The congregation didn't shift, didn't cough, didn't breathe loudly. They just waited. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, layered, like multiple people speaking in perfect unison, words overlapping by milliseconds to create a disorienting echo effect. "Brothers and sisters," he said, and I felt the words in my chest more than heard them. "Today we welcome a seeker, someone who has come looking for answers about faith in dying places." Every head in the church turned to look at me, simultaneously, the same blank expression on every face. "She doesn't yet understand," Reverend Thorne continued, still looking at me, "that there are no dying places, only places that are being reborn. Shepherdstown is not dying, Miss Hartley. Shepherdstown is becoming." I hadn't told him my name, not on the phone, not in my emails. I'd used my university account with just my initials. "How do you—" I started, but he raised a hand, and I found I couldn't speak. My voice simply stopped, cut off mid-syllable. "The other church is closed," he said, his multi-voiced words seeming to come from all directions now. Because their congregations understood. They merged with us, joined us, became part of the true body of Christ, not the metaphorical body, the actual body. We are all one flesh here, one mind, one breath, one voice. As he spoke, the congregation began to move, not individually, as a single unit. They stood up in perfect unison, turned to face each other, and joined hands. And I saw it then. Where their skin touched, there was no separation. Their hands had merged, flesh flowing into flesh like wax melting together. "You came here to study death," Reverend Thorne said, and now I could see that his mouth wasn't moving correctly. The words were coming from somewhere behind his teeth, deeper in his throat, or deeper still. "But death is an illusion. Separation is an illusion. We have found the truth. Would you like to join us?" My voice returned suddenly, and I screamed. I bolted for the door, but the congregation moved as one to block my path. Not running, gliding. Their feet moved in perfect synchronization, like they were all controlled by a single puppeteer. Their blank faces turned toward me, and in unison, they spoke with Reverend Thorne's layered voice. "Don't be afraid. Fear is what keeps us separate. Fear is what makes us individuals. But individuality is loneliness, Miss Hartley. Wouldn't you like to never be lonely again? To always know exactly what everyone around you is thinking? To be completely, perfectly understood? I grabbed a hymnal from a pew and threw it at the nearest person, an elderly woman. It hit her in the chest and she didn't flinch, didn't blink. The hymnal fell to the floor, and where it had struck her, I saw her dress was moving, undulating. Something beneath the fabric was shifting, reorganizing. I ran toward the side door Reverend Thorne had entered through. It led to a small office, and then to another door marked Basement Authorized Personnel Only. I could hear the congregation behind me, their footsteps perfectly synchronized, 60 people moving as one. The basement door was unlocked. I plunged down the stairs into darkness, my phone's flashlight barely cutting through the thick air. The smell hit me immediately. Organic, sweet, wrong. The basement was larger than the church above it, much larger, and it was filled with what I can only describe as roots. They weren't plant roots. They were too pink, too fleshy. They pulsed with rhythm, a heartbeat, and they connected to everything. The foundation, the walls, spreading up toward the church floor above. I followed one of the larger roots to where it emerged from the concrete floor. It went down, deep down, into earth that had been excavated far below any normal foundation. I heard movement on the stairs. The congregation was coming, but slowly, deliberately. They weren't chasing me. They were herding me, directing me deeper into the basement. The church was built on top of it. Reverend Thorne's voice echoed from the stairs, still that unsettling multi-layered sound. In 1843, they found it while digging the foundation. Something buried here, something ancient. The first pastor thought it was a miracle, a sign from God. Flesh that never rotted, tissue that was still warm after who knows how many centuries underground. I backed away from the stairs, deeper into the root system. My foot caught on something and I fell, landing in a mass of the fleshy tendrils. They were warm, and they moved under me, adjusting to my weight like a living mattress. They built the church on top of it to contain it, to worship it, to feed it. But they didn't understand. It doesn't need containment. It needs connection. For 178 years, every prayer spoken in this church fed it. Every sermon, every hymn, all that collective belief, all that communal energy. It absorbed it, learned from it, and finally, it understood what humans want more than anything. The congregation reached the bottom of the stairs, forming a semicircle around me. But now I could see them properly in my phone's light, and I wished I couldn't. Their clothes were moving, breathing. Underneath, their bodies were no longer separate. Where fabric gaped open, I saw flesh merge together, not violently, but seamlessly. They weren't 60 people standing close together. They were 60 parts of one larger thing. "We want to belong," they said in unison with Reverend Thorne's voice. "We want community. We want to be part of something greater than ourselves." Humans have always wanted this. Every religion, every society, every family, they're all attempts at the same thing. To stop being alone. To merge. One of them, a middle-aged man I recognized from local news articles as the mayor, stepped forward, or the mayor's body did. I wasn't sure there was still a mayor as an individual anymore. 3 years ago, the thing beneath the church finally broke through. It had learned enough, absorbed enough collective consciousness from worship. It emerged into the church basement and offered us what we'd been praying for all along. True communion, not symbolic, real. We accepted. The mayor's body knelt beside me. His hand touched my arm, and I felt my skin warming where we made contact. Not burning, welcoming, like my body recognized something familiar in his touch. The other churches joined us when they understood. 247 people in Shepherdstown, all of us, one now. No more conflict, no more loneliness, no more fear. I jerked my arm away and scrambled backward, but the roots were everywhere. They grabbed at me, not aggressively, but gently, like helping hands. One wrapped around my ankle. Where it touched, I felt warmth spreading. And something else. Whispers, not sounds, thoughts. Hundreds of thoughts that weren't my own, flowing into my mind. Margaret Simmons, 67, retired teacher, always alone. Now, never alone, never alone, never. Thomas Chen, 34, lost his wife, lost his child, lost everything. But found us, found wholeness, found. Jessica Porter, 19, bullied, isolated, different. But now same, we are all. The thoughts weren't intrusive. They were inviting, offering, showing me what I could become. Part of something, part of everyone. No more isolation, no more individual suffering, just collective existence. Your research was about dying communities, Reverend Thorne said. And now he was closer, though I hadn't seen him move. But you had it backward. Communities die because people insist on remaining separate. Shepherdstown isn't dying, it's transcending, becoming what every community has always tried to become, a true collective. More roots emerged from the floor around me, but I noticed something. They weren't attacking. They were waiting, offering themselves. The choice was mine. They wouldn't force me. They didn't need to. Because part of me, a growing part, wanted to accept. Why? I gasped. Why would anyone want this? Have you ever been truly understood? The collective asked through Reverend Thorne. Have you ever shared a thought and had someone comprehend it exactly as you meant it? Have you ever felt completely, perfectly not alone? No, you haven't. Because human communication is broken. Language is approximation. But we don't need language anymore. We share thoughts directly, feel each other's feelings. There is no miscommunication, no loneliness, no separation between self and other. I thought of my life. Years of academic isolation, failed relationships because I couldn't express what I felt. The constant, exhausting effort of maintaining boundaries, defining myself as separate from others. And for what? To be alone? To die alone? To live in a world where no one truly understood me? The roots touched my legs, my arms, my back. Warm, welcoming. And with each touch, I felt more of their collective consciousness. It wasn't chaotic, it was peaceful, organized, beautiful in its unity. The thing beneath the church isn't evil, they said. It's just a different form of life. One that exists as connection rather than separation. When it emerged, it didn't attack us. It offered us a choice, join or remain apart. Most of us chose to join. Most? I seized on the word. What happened to the others? The collective was silent for a moment, then. They left. We let them leave. But they couldn't tell anyone what they'd seen. Who would believe them? So Shepherdstown's population just declined in the records. From 400 to 247, the ones who left, the ones who chose loneliness. A root touched my face, and suddenly I was inside their memories. I saw it all. The discovery in 1843, the first congregation's terror turning to wonder, the slow realization that this thing, this ancient organism, was feeding on their worship but giving something back. Knowledge, unity. By the 1920s, they were ready. They invited it to merge with them, And it did. I saw Reverend Thorne's memories too. He'd been separate once, depressed, suicidal. He'd come to Shepherdstown to die quietly, but the collective found him first, invited him, saved him, made him their voice because his voice was beautiful, even layered with all of theirs. And I felt their offer clearly now. Join us. Be understood. Be part of something eternal. Or leave, return to your isolated existence. Carry this knowledge alone forever, never able to share it with anyone who would believe. I almost said yes. God help me, I was seconds away from accepting. But then I felt something else in the collective consciousness. Something they hadn't meant to show me. The thing beneath the church wasn't satisfied with Shepherdstown. It was growing, learning, and soon it would be ready to spread, to offer itself to other towns, other cities, to invite all of humanity to join. This wasn't a small cult. It was a seed, a beginning. And I was being offered a choice. Be part of the first wave of a new form of human existence, or resist. I made my choice. I grabbed my phone and ran. The collective didn't stop me. They could have. But they let me go, their unified voice following me up the stairs. You'll be back. Or someone like you will. We're patient. We have time. And eventually, everyone chooses connection over isolation. I made it to my car, drove for 3 hours before I stopped shaking enough to pull over. I reported everything to the police, but when they investigated Shepherdstown, they found nothing unusual. A small congregation, a normal church. Reverend Thorne gave them a tour, showed them the basement, just normal storage, cleaning supplies, old hymnals. The roots were gone, or hidden, or waiting. I have the photos on my phone, proof. But when I look at them now, they show only normal church interiors, normal people. The phone edited them somehow, or my memory is editing them, or the collective is reaching farther than I thought, changing records, adjusting evidence. 6 months have passed. I finished my dissertation, got my degree, but I can't stop thinking about what they offered. Some nights, I wake up feeling utterly alone, and I remember the warmth of those roots, the peace of shared consciousness. Yesterday, I received a letter. No return address. Inside, just one line in beautiful handwriting. The door is always open. The collective grows. When you're ready to stop being alone, we'll be waiting. I burned the letter, but I kept the ashes. Because part of me, the part that gets bigger every day, knows I'll go back eventually. We all will. My name is Jake Morrison, and I used to work as a night security guard at Carbondale General Hospital in Lackawanna County. Notice I said used to. What happened during my last shift in October 2022 made sure I'd never work another night shift anywhere, ever again. Some buildings are just wrong at night. And some of them are wrong because of what's still walking their hallways long after visiting hours end. I'd been working at Carbondale General for 8 months when I got assigned to the 4th floor. The hospital had 6 floors total, but the 4th had been partially closed since 2019. Budget cuts, they said. Only the East Wing remained operational as a long-term care unit for comatose patients and severe dementia cases. The West Wing sat empty, rooms stripped of equipment, waiting for renovations that would probably never come. My job was simple. Patrol both wings every 2 hours, check the stairwells, make sure no one had broken in looking for drugs. The first thing I noticed was the smell. The East Wing smelled like any hospital, antiseptic, medication, that underlying scent of illness. But the West Wing smelled different. Older, like the air itself had been sitting still for decades, not just 3 years. And it was cold, not uncomfortable cold, Wrong cold. The kind that makes your teeth ache. On my first patrol at midnight, I noticed something odd about the empty rooms in the West Wing. Every door was closed except one, room 437. It stood wide open, and I could have sworn I'd checked it earlier. It had been closed then. I marked it on my log and continued my rounds. At 2 a.m., I did my second patrol. Room 437 was closed, but now room 423 was open. I was certain I hadn't opened it. I checked my log, definitely closed 2 hours ago. I walked to the doorway and shined my flashlight inside. Standard hospital room. Empty bed frame, no mattress. Bare walls. Nothing unusual except for one detail. The floor was covered in a fine layer of dust, and there were footprints. Small footprints. Child-sized. Leading from the doorway to the window, then back to the doorway, then disappearing. The footprints ended right where I was standing, like whoever made them had walked out of the room and simply vanished into the air. I called my supervisor, Marcus, an older guy who'd worked at the hospital for 15 years. He came up, looked at the footprints, and his face went pale. "Which room?" he asked. 423. "Christ, lock it. Lock it now and don't open it again." "What's going on?" Marcus grabbed my arm, led me away from the room. Every guard who's worked this floor has seen them. The footprints, always in different rooms, always leading to the window. The hospital knows. Administration knows. But they don't talk about it because what are they going to do? Hire an exorcist? Marcus explained. In 1987, there had been a fire on the 4th floor. Electrical malfunction. 3 patients died, including a 7-year-old girl named Rebecca Marsh. She'd been in for a routine appendix surgery. The fire broke out at 2 a.m. Her room was 423. By the time they got to her, she was at the window, trying to break the glass. The windows in 1987 didn't open. Safety regulation. She died from smoke inhalation, hands pressed against the glass, watching firefighters on the ground below who couldn't reach her in time. Ever since then, Marcus said, the 4th floor has been active, especially the West Wing. Doors open and close on their own. Footprints appear. And sometimes, he paused, clearly debating whether to continue. Sometimes, security cameras catch her. A girl in a hospital gown, walking the halls, looking for a way out. "That's impossible," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. "I've seen the footage. We all have. Administration deleted it every time, but the guards keep copies. If you work here long enough, you'll see her yourself. Just don't follow her. Don't try to help her. She's not looking for help. She's looking for someone to understand what she went through. And if she thinks you understand..." He didn't finish that sentence. At 4 a.m., I did my 3rd patrol. Every door in the West Wing was open. All 24 rooms, all of them. And in each doorway, small footprints leading inside, but not leading back out. I stood in that hallway, my flashlight shaking in my hand, and tried to rationalize it. Someone was messing with me. Had to be. A prank on the new night guard. But the dust on those footprints was old. Settled. Not fresh. Like they'd been there for hours or years. I checked my security cameras. The hallway monitors showed exactly what I was seeing. Every door open, footprints visible. But one camera, the one aimed at room 423, showed something else. A small figure standing in the doorway. Gray hospital gown, long dark hair, facing away from the camera. Even in the grainy night vision footage, I could see her shoulders rising and falling. She was breathing, or something was making her chest move. As I watched, she turned slowly to face the camera. But where her face should have been There was only darkness, not shadow. Absence, like someone had cut a hole in reality where her head was. And in that absence, I saw something moving. Flames. Small flames, flickering deep in that void where her face should be. The figure started walking, directly toward the camera. I could track her progress on the monitor. She was heading for the stairwell that would bring her to the first floor, to the security office, to me. I did something I'm not proud of. I ran. I abandoned my post and ran for the elevator, pressing the button frantically. Behind me, I heard the stairwell door open, heard small feet on the tile. Coming closer, the elevator arrived. I threw myself inside and hit the button for the ground floor. As the doors closed, I saw her, standing at the end of the hallway. That void where her face should be was tilted toward me, watching. The flames inside had grown larger, more intense. And I could hear something now, not through my ears, but inside my head. Crackling, breathing, screaming without sound. The elevator descended. I called Marcus, gasping into the phone. "She's out. The girl. She's out of the West Wing. Lock yourself in the security office. Don't answer the door. I'm calling the night supervisor." "What the hell is she?" "Not a ghost," Marcus said, and his voice was shaking. "Something else. Something that's using her memory. The hospital was built on the site of an old asylum that burned down in 1952. 73 people died in that fire. We think the fires are connected. Something about burning, about smoke and flame and dying that way. It draws them together, makes them stronger." The elevator reached the ground floor. I ran for the security office, locked myself inside. The monitors showed normal hospital activity. Nurses at their stations, a few patients walking the halls with IV poles. Everything normal, except the fourth floor. Every camera on the fourth floor showed the same thing, that small figure, standing motionless in different locations. One camera, she was at the nurse's station. Another in a doorway. Another pressed against a window. She was everywhere on that floor simultaneously. That's when I understood. This wasn't one ghost. This was the memory of her death imprinted on the building itself, playing out over and over in different rooms. At 5 a.m., the office phone rang. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Static on the line. Then, underneath the static, breathing. Wet. Labored. Like someone who'd inhaled too much smoke. "Please." A child's voice. Barely a whisper. "Please. It hurts." "Rebecca?" I don't know why I said her name, but it felt right. "It hurts. It won't stop hurting. Every night. Every night it happens again. The fire, the smoke, the window that won't break. Why won't anyone help me break the window?" My throat tightened. "Rebecca, you're not on the 4th floor anymore. The fire was a long time ago." No, it's happening now. It's always happening now. I can see the firefighters. They're so close. Why won't they help? Why won't the window break?" Her voice rose to a scream. "Why won't it break?" The monitors exploded. Not literally, but every screen showing the 4th floor went to static. When they cleared, every single camera showed the same image. Room 423. The window, and pressed against the glass from the inside, small hands. Dozens of them, overlapping. Like every time she tried to break that window, every desperate attempt had left an imprint. The hands weren't solid. They were made of smoke. And they were all pushing, trying to break through. "Help me break it," the voice on the phone whispered. "Come help me. You understand? I can feel it. You understand what it's like to be trapped." She was right. I did understand. I'd been trapped before. different kind of trap. When I was 19, I'd been in a car accident, pinned in the wreckage for 4 hours while firefighters worked to cut me out. I'd watched them through the cracked windshield, so close, but unable to reach me. The same helplessness, the same terror. She'd felt my memory of it somehow, connected to it. "I can't help you," I said into the phone. "Rebecca, I'm sorry, but you have to let go. The fire's over. You're not trapped anymore." Liar. Her voice changed, became layered with others. Adult voices, older voices. "The fire is never over. The asylum fire, the hospital fire, all the fires. They're all still burning. We're all still burning. And you're going to help us. You're going to open the windows." The monitors changed again. Now they showed every floor of the hospital. And on every floor, standing in front of windows, figures. Dozens of them. All in different clothing from different eras. All pressed against the glass. All made of smoke and flame. 73 people from the asylum fire. 3 from the hospital fire. All of them trapped in their final moments, reliving it endlessly. And they were all looking at the security office camera, all looking at me. The door to the office rattled. I hadn't heard anyone approach, but something, was trying the handle. The lock held. "For now, let us out," the voice on the phone said. No longer just Rebecca, but all of them speaking together. "Open the windows, break the glass, free us from this loop. We've been dying for so long, over and over. Every night when the hospital is quiet, we burn again. Help us. Open the windows and let us out." The door rattled harder. I could see smoke seeping under the gap at the bottom. Gray smoke with orange embers floating in it. The temperature in the office was rising. My shirt stuck to my back with sweat. I looked at the monitors. All those figures, all that suffering. Trapped in their worst moments, unable to escape, unable to die properly. Part of me, the part that remembered being trapped in that car, wanted to help. Wanted to run to every floor and throw open every window and let them escape. But I knew. Somehow, I knew. They weren't asking to be freed. They were asking to spread. The fire hadn't ended for them. It had just been contained. Inside the hospital, inside the building's memory. If I opened those windows, I wouldn't be freeing them. I'd be releasing them, letting them carry their endless burning into the world outside. "I'm sorry," I said into the phone. "I can't." The scream that came through the line was inhuman. Rage and pain and 76 years of dying mixed together. The smoke under the door thickened. The door itself was heating up, paint beginning to bubble. Then the fire alarm went off. The real fire alarm. And I smelled actual smoke. They'd started a real fire. On the 4th floor, I had seconds to decide. Stay in the office and burn, or run through a hospital filled with smoke ghosts. I chose to run. I burst out of the office into chaos. The fire alarm had woken everyone. Nurses were evacuating patients. Doctors were shouting instructions. But none of them could see what I saw. The smoke in the stairwells wasn't just smoke. It was full of them. Figures made of ash and ember, flowing down the stairs like water, reaching for the windows, the doors, any opening. I grabbed a nurse. "Get everyone out. There's a real fire on 4. The evacuation was practiced, efficient. Within 10 minutes, the hospital was empty except for emergency response. Fire trucks arrived, firefighters went in, and I stood in the parking lot, watching the 4th floor windows. Every single window on the west wing showed the same thing. Small handprints pressed against the glass from inside, still trying to break through. The fire was contained quickly, just one room, room 423. Electrical fire, they said. Old wiring. But I knew better. She'd started it. They'd all started it. One more attempt to relive their deaths, and maybe, this time, escape. I quit the next day. But before I left, I asked Marcus one question. Has anyone ever opened the windows? Has anyone ever let them out? His face went gray. Once, 1994, a security guard who'd lost his family in a house fire. He understood too well. Went to the 4th floor at 2 a.m. and opened every window in the West Wing. They found him the next morning. Dead. Worse, alive, but changed. He couldn't stop talking about burning, about being trapped, about needing to break windows. They committed him. 6 months later, the psychiatric facility he was in burned down. Electrical fire. He was in a room with barred windows. They found him pressed against the bars, hands burned black, trying to get out. I moved to another state, changed careers, but it followed me anyway. Not the ghosts themselves. I don't see them anymore. But the understanding. Once you know that kind of suffering exists, once you've connected with it, you can't unknow it. I feel them now everywhere. Every building that's burned, every place where someone died trapped, helpless, watching rescue just out of reach. Last week, I walked past an old apartment building, boarded up, condemned, and I felt them inside. Different ghosts, different fire, same endless dying. My hand reached for the boards over the door, started pulling. I wanted to open it, wanted to let them out. Because I understand what it's like to be trapped, to see help so close and not be able to reach it. I stopped myself, walked away, but my hand burns now, right where I touch the boards. And in the burn pattern on my palm, if I look closely, I can see tiny handprints, pressed into my skin from the inside, like something is trying to get out. Carbondale Hospital still operates. The 4th floor West Wing is still closed, and every night at 2 a.m., if you're watching the windows, you'll see them. Small hands, pressing against the glass, still trying to break through, still burning, still dying, still hoping someone will finally understand enough to help them escape. But if you ever find yourself wanting to open those windows, remember, some suffering doesn't want to be freed. It wants to be shared. And once you invite it in, once you truly understand it, it becomes yours too. The fire never goes out. It just finds new fuel. My name is Rachel Kowalski, and I'm a paramedic based in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. That beautiful Victorian town nestled in the Lehigh Gorge that tourists love for its historic charm and fall foliage. What tourists don't know, what even most residents don't talk about, is what happens on the streets after midnight. There are things that watch this town, things that have been watching since long before it was called Jim Thorpe, back when it was Mauch Chunk, back before it was anything at all. I've been working the night shift for 3 years, and I've learned the rules. The unspoken rules that every paramedic, cop, and late-night worker in Jim Thorpe knows, but never writes down. Rule 1. Never look directly at the windows on Broadway Street between 2 and 4 a.m. Rule 2. If you hear footsteps behind you on the switchback trail at night, keep walking forward. Don't turn around. Rule 3. If someone calls 911 from the old cemetery, do not respond. Ever. I learned why these rules exist the hard way. It started on October 12th, 2022. We got a call at 2:47 a.m., medical emergency at 347 Broadway Street. Elderly woman, possible stroke. My partner was Darius, a veteran who'd been working Jim Thorpe for 15 years. When he heard the address, his face went pale. "We can't take that call," he said. What? Why not? That building. Rachel, there's no one living at 347 Broadway. That building's been empty for 8 years. But dispatch confirmed. Someone had called from inside. A woman's voice, elderly, frightened, giving the exact address and apartment number. We had to respond. Darius gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white as we drove to Broadway Street. The building was beautiful in that faded way old Jim Thorpe structures are. 3 stories, red brick, ornate stonework around the windows. But every window was dark. Not just dark, covered from the inside with something that blocked all light. As we approached with our equipment, Darius grabbed my arm. Rachel, listen. Whatever we see in there, we get in. We check for a patient. We get out. We don't talk to anyone else. We don't answer any questions. And we absolutely, under no circumstances, look directly at anyone standing in the windows of other apartments. Understood? You're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. This building, people used to live here. Normal people. But 8 years ago, they all left within the same month. Every single tenant. They wouldn't say why. They just left. And since then, the building's been owned by some company in Philadelphia that never answers calls, never does maintenance, never tries to rent it out. But the lights work inside. And sometimes people see faces in the windows. We climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. The building smelled wrong, not decay, not mold. Something sweeter. Like flowers, but wrong flowers. The kind you'd smell at a funeral, but more intense, almost choking. Apartment 3B. The door was ajar. Inside, the apartment was furnished. Completely furnished, like someone still lived there. Victorian-style furniture, photographs on the walls, even a teacup on the coffee table with liquid still in it. But everything was covered in dust. Thick dust. Years of it. Except for one thing. The telephone on the wall. Old rotary phone. It was completely clean, and it was off the hook, swinging slightly like someone had just hung it up. "Hello?" I called out. "This is the paramedics. Someone called for help?" No response. We checked the bedroom. Empty. The bathroom. Empty. The kitchen. Empty. No one here. No signs of anyone having been here recently, except that clean telephone and that fresh cup of tea. Darius was backing toward the door. "We need to leave. Now." But someone called. "There has to be. Rachel, look at the windows." I turned. The windows weren't covered from the inside. They were covered from the outside. Something was pressed against the glass, not blocking light. There was no light to block this high up, this late at night. These were shapes, human-shaped shadows pressed flat against the windows from outside. But we were on the 3rd floor. There was no fire escape, nothing to stand on. These shapes were hovering in midair, pressed against the glass, watching us. As I stared, one of them moved, the head tilted, and I heard it, a voice from everywhere and nowhere. "You came. Finally. Someone came." Darius grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the door. But it closed before we reached it. Not slammed. It drifted shut, gentle as a breath. And the lock clicked. From the outside. "No, no, no." Darius was whispering like a prayer. "Not tonight. Please, not tonight." The shadows on the windows were moving now, sliding across the glass like they were searching for a way in. The voice continued, and I realized it was coming from the telephone, the one still off the hook, swinging. "We've been waiting, watching. You're the first ones who came when we called. Everyone else ignored us. But you came. That means you're supposed to help." "Help with what?" My voice cracked. "We can't leave. We've been here so long. watching the town, making sure it stays safe. But we're tired. So tired. We need someone to take over, to become the new Watchers. Darius was trying the door, pulling at it desperately. Rachel, don't listen. Don't engage with him. But I needed to understand. Who are you? Why are you watching? The shadows on the window pressed closer, and I could see details now. Faces. Dozens of faces. Overlapping. All ages. All pressed flat like they'd been crushed against the glass. And they were all watching me with empty eye sockets. We were the first. The Lenape people knew about this place. The convergence. Where three valleys meet. Where water flows in patterns that echo other patterns, deeper patterns. Things notice such places. Things from outside try to come through. We watched. We kept them out. For centuries. Then the settlers came, and we died. But we couldn't stop watching. So we stayed. The town changed names. The voice continued from the telephone. Mach Chunk, then Jim Thorpe. But we stayed, always watching, keeping the thin places sealed, preventing the others from coming through. But we're fading. We need living Watchers now. People who choose to stay, to never leave, to stand at the windows and watch. Forever. The shadows began seeping through the glass, not breaking it, passing through like the glass was water. Flowing into the room, they brought the cold with them, and that funeral flower smell intensified until I could barely breathe. Darius finally got his radio working. Dispatch, we need immediate backup at 347 Broadway, apartment 3B. We are... The radio died. The shadows had reached it, flowing over the plastic casing, killing the electronics. You don't need backup, the voice said. And now it was coming from all around us, from the walls themselves. You just need to choose. Stay and watch. Keep the town safe. Become like us. Or leave and let the others in. Let them cross through the thin places. Let them walk Broadway Street and the Switchback Trail. Let them take the living instead of us taking the dead. One of the shadows reached me, touched my hand. It felt like ice and velvet and something else. Like memories that weren't mine. I saw through its eyes. Jim Thorpe at night, but different, darker. With things moving in the spaces between buildings, things that shouldn't exist, held back only by constant vigilance, by eyes that never blinked, by watchers who never rested. We keep them out, the voice whispered directly into my mind now. But we're so tired. Please, join us, just for a little while, just until we can rest. Darius did something I didn't expect. He started reciting an address, out loud, over and over. 51 Race Street, 51 Race Street, 51 Race Street. The shadows recoiled slightly. The voice hissed, "What are you doing?" 51 Race Street, Darius continued, louder now. The old jail museum, the cell where the Molly Maguires were hanged. You're not the only ones who watch this town. You're not the only ones who stayed after death. The shadows writhed, agitated. I didn't understand until Darius grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the window. Not away from the shadows, but toward them. The Molly Maguires were executed for protecting their own. They watched too. Different watchers. They keep balance. They keep you from taking the living. He looked at me. Rachel, break the window. Let the other watchers know we're here. But we're 3 floors up. Trust me, break it. I grabbed a chair and swung it at the window. The glass shattered, and the shadows screamed. Actual sound this time, not just in my mind. And through the broken window, I saw them. Figures on the street below, looking up. Men in 19th century clothing, 6 of them. The Molly Maguires, still watching Jim Thorpe from a different kind of death, still protecting in their own way. The shadows in the apartment retreated, flowing back through the windows they'd entered from. The voice was fading. You don't understand. Without us, the others will come, without constant watching. Then we'll find living volunteers, Darius shouted. People who choose it, not people you trap. The apartment door unlocked. We ran, down the stairs, through the building, out onto Broadway Street. The figures we'd seen from above were gone, but I could still feel them. The other watchers, the Molly Maguires, keeping balance, preventing any one group of spirits from claiming complete control of the town. Darius drove us back to the station in silence. Finally, I asked, "How did you know? About the jail? About them?" Every emergency worker in Jim Thorpe knows. There are different groups. The first watchers, the ones we just met. They watch for external threats, things trying to come into our reality. But they've been dead so long they've forgotten what it means to be alive. They think everyone should join them. Then there are the Molly Maguires, executed men who watch for internal threats, for the living hurting the living. They keep the first watchers in check. Are there others? 4 more groups. Different deaths, different purposes. Jim Thorpe has been watched for centuries, layer upon layer of watchers. That's why weird things happen here, but nothing truly catastrophic ever does. The watchers keep balance. Usually. He pulled into the station parking lot. Every 20 years or so, the first watchers get desperate. They need to recruit. They try to trap living people into joining them. It happened in 2002. A cop disappeared. 1982, a nurse. Always emergency responders. People who answer calls for help. People with a protective instinct they can manipulate. So what happens now? I asked. They're still out there, still watching, still needing recruits. Now you know the rules. Now you understand why we have them. The thin places in Jim Thorpe, they're real. Things do try to come through. And something does need to watch. But it has to be voluntary. People who choose it, with full knowledge, not people tricked or trapped. He pulled out a small card from his wallet and handed it to me. On it was a phone number and a single word. Watchers. There's a group, living people who've agreed to help. They take shifts watching the thin places. A few hours a week, nothing more. Enough to take pressure off the dead watchers, to keep them from getting desperate enough to try recruiting by force. If you want to help, really help, call that number. But only if you're sure. I pocketed the card. We went back to work, answering real calls, helping real people with real medical emergencies. But for the rest of that shift, I kept seeing faces in windows. Not threatening, just watching, waiting, hoping someone would volunteer to share their burden. 3 days later, I called the number. A woman answered, gave me an address. I went there and found a dozen people. Locals, all emergency workers or former military. People with protective instincts. They explained the commitment, 4 hours a week, stationed at various points around Jim Thorpe, simply watching, staying aware, making sure nothing crosses through the thin places. You'll see things, the woman said. Things trying to come through, but just watching them prevents it. Consciousness holds them back. They can only cross when no one's paying attention. I've been a watcher for 8 months now. Every Thursday night, midnight to 4 a.m., I sit in my car at the corner of Broadway and Race Street, just watching. And I've seen them, the things that try to cross. They're not monsters, not demons. They're more like thoughts that have gained enough coherence to almost become real. ideas of things that could exist, trying to force themselves into existence through the thin places. Most nights, nothing happens. My watching is enough. Just being there, aware, prevents them from solidifying. But some nights, they get close, press against the membrane between their reality and ours. I see them in the corner of my eye, shapes that don't quite resolve, movements that stop when I look directly at them. And I see the dead watchers too. They're still there in the windows, in the shadows. But they're less desperate now. Knowing living volunteers are sharing the burden, they can rest more. The first watchers even helped me once. When something particularly strong tried to cross, they manifested fully, added their observation to mine, pushed it back together. We coexist now, the living and the dead, all watching Jim Thorpe, all keeping the thin places sealed. It's exhausting. Sometimes I want to quit. But then I remember what Darius told me. Every beautiful town has a secret. Jim Thorpe's secret is that its beauty is protected. By us, by them, by everyone who chooses to watch. Last week, we got another call from 347 Broadway. A new recruit, the first watchers told us through channels I still don't fully understand. Someone who answered, who came, who saw them and didn't run. Good. We need more. The thin places are getting thinner. If you ever visit Jim Thorpe, you'll love it. The Victorian architecture, the hiking trails, the small town charm. But if you're there late at night, pay attention to the windows, to the spaces between buildings, to the feeling that you're being watched. You are. But not by anything that wants to hurt you. You're being watched by protectors, by people and things that died but stayed, by volunteers like me who give up their sleep to make sure tourists can walk safely through our beautiful town. And if you're someone with protective instincts, if you're someone who answers calls for help, be careful, because the watchers are always recruiting. And once you see what they see, once you understand what's really pressing against the thin places of our world, you can't unsee it. You can't unknow it. I don't regret calling that number. But I also can't leave Jim Thorpe anymore. Not really. I tried moving last month, got a job offer in Philadelphia, better pay, better hours. But I couldn't do it. Couldn't abandon my watch. Couldn't leave the thin places unguarded. Jim Thorpe is beautiful. Jim Thorpe is safe. And Jim Thorpe will stay that way as long as someone is always watching. But the watching never ends. Never. The thin places don't close. They only get thinner. And every year, we need more watchers. So if you visit, enjoy the town, walk the trails, tour the jail. Just remember, when you feel eyes on you at night, don't be afraid. We're watching over you. But also, we're watching to see if you're someone who could join us. My name is Michael Delgado, and I'm a structural engineer contracted by the state of Pennsylvania to assess the stability of abandoned mine tunnels. In March 2023, I was assigned to survey the old anthracite coal mines beneath Pittston, a small city in Luzerne County that sits on top of a literal honeycomb of mining tunnels dating back to the 1800s. The mines have been closed since the Knox mine disaster of 1959, when the Susquehanna River broke through into the mines, flooding them and ending deep mining in the region forever. What I found down there wasn't water damage or structural compromise. It was something that's been living in those tunnels for over 60 years. Something that used to be children. The city had been experiencing sinkholes, 3 in the past year, swallowing parts of streets and yards. My job was to map the tunnels beneath the affected areas and recommend which ones needed to be filled or reinforced. I was given access to old mining maps from the 1950s, but everyone warned me they were incomplete. Miners had dug unauthorized tunnels, bootleg operations, secret passages. No one knew the full extent of what was down there. I entered through an old ventilation shaft on the north side of town, lowering equipment and then myself on a winch system. The descent took 4 minutes, about 200 feet down into darkness that hadn't seen sunlight in decades. My headlamp illuminated rough-hewn rock walls, timber supports black with age and moisture, and standing water that reflected my light like oil. The moment my boots hit the tunnel floor, I heard them. Children's voices. Singing. The sound echoed through the tunnels, impossible to pinpoint the direction. I stood motionless, listening. The song was old, really old. A mining song I'd heard in historical recordings. Down, Down, Down by William B. Keating, written in 1926. But these voices were children's voices, high and clear, echoing through the tunnels in perfect harmony. Down, down, down in the darkness of the grave. Gently they go, the beautiful, the tender, the kind. I keyed my radio. Surface, this is Delgado. Are there any children near the ventilation shaft? I'm hearing voices. Static. Then my surface coordinator, Janet. Negative. The area is cleared. No one within half a mile. What kind of voices? Children. Singing. Long pause. Mike, get your readings and get out. Don't follow any sounds you hear down there. Why? What's going on? Just do your job quickly and come up. Please. But I had a survey to complete. I activated my mapping scanner and started walking, following the main tunnel east. The children's singing continued, sometimes closer, sometimes farther away, always just out of sight around the next bend. My scanner was picking up the tunnel structure, but also something else. Heat signatures, small ones, moving. I rounded a corner and my headlamp illuminated something that made me freeze. Handprints, dozens of them. Small handprints covering the tunnel walls, made in what looked like coal dust or mud. But these weren't random. They formed patterns, arrows, all pointing deeper into the mine, all pointing away from the exit. I took photos of the handprints and continued my survey. The tunnel branched multiple times, but the handprints always marked one path, leading me deeper. Against my better judgment, I followed. My equipment was picking up larger cavities ahead, probably the main mining chambers where they'd extracted the coal. The singing stopped. Suddenly, complete silence except for the drip of water and my own breathing. Then I heard different sounds. Scraping, like small feet on stone, moving fast, multiple sources surrounding me. Hello? My voice echoed away into darkness. Is someone down here? A child's voice answered from behind me. Are you here to take us home? I spun around. Nothing. Just empty tunnel. But I'd heard it clearly. A boy's voice, maybe 8 or 9 years old. Hopeful, desperate. Where are you? I called out. We're here. We're always here. We can't leave. The voice came from a different direction now, ahead of me. Not since the water came, not since we drowned. My blood ran cold. The Knox mine disaster. January 22nd, 1959. The Susquehanna River broke through into the mines. They evacuated everyone in time, or so the official records claimed. No casualties. Everyone made it out. But I was starting to understand that wasn't the complete truth. How many of you are there? I asked the darkness. 12. A girl's voice this time, from my left. 12 of us were down here that day, working. We weren't supposed to be here. We were too young. But families needed money. So we worked in secret, in the deep tunnels, the ones not on the maps. I saw them then, at the edge of my headlamp's reach, Small figures. Children. But wrong. Their clothes were tattered, old-fashioned. Their skin had a strange pallor. Not quite gray, but not any living color either. And their eyes reflected my light like animals' eyes. Too bright, too aware. When the water came, the girl continued, stepping slightly closer into my light. We ran, but the tunnels filled so fast. We tried to reach the main shafts, tried to get to where the adult miners were, but we didn't know the way. We got lost. The water caught us in the deep tunnels. No one knew we were down here. No one came looking. A boy moved into view on my right. His face was young, but his eyes were ancient. We drowned together, in the darkness, in the cold water. We held hands so we wouldn't be alone, and when we died, we stayed, together, still holding hands, still trying to find the way out. More of them emerged from the shadows. 12 children, ranging from maybe 7 to 14 years old. All in 1950s clothing, all dripping, always dripping, even though the flood had been 64 years ago. They formed a circle around me, not threatening, but pleading. "You're an engineer," the first boy said. "You know these tunnels. You have maps, lights. Can you show us the way out? We've been looking for so long. We're so tired of the darkness." I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed to run. But looking at their faces, these children who died alone in the dark, who'd been forgotten, whose deaths had been covered up to avoid scandal, I couldn't. I just couldn't. "I can try," I heard myself saying. "But you've been down here for 60 years. You've had decades to find the exits." "We can't see them," the girl explained. "When you die down here, the tunnels change, they grow, they connect to other places, deeper places. We can walk for hours and end up back where we started. The mind won't let us leave, or we can't remember how to leave. We're not sure anymore." Another boy spoke up. "But you're alive. You can see the real tunnels, the ones that exist in your world. Maybe if we follow you, if we stay close to someone living, the mind will let us pass." I checked my equipment. My mapping scanner showed the route back to the entrance, about half a mile through 3 connected tunnels. Straightforward, I could guide them. But Janet's warning echoed in my mind. "Don't follow any sounds you hear down there." "Has anyone else come down here?" I asked. "Other engineers, inspectors?" The children exchanged glances. The oldest boy, maybe 14, answered, "7 people, over the years. We asked them all to help. 6 refused, ran away. 1 agreed." "What happened to him?" Silence. Then the girl spoke softly. "He led us toward the exit. We followed. But the mind got angry. The mind doesn't want us to leave. The tunnels changed, collapsed. He didn't make it. We tried to save him. We really tried. But he was alive, and the mind could hurt him. It can't hurt us anymore. We're already dead." I saw them then, the remains, in a collapsed section of tunnel about 30 feet ahead. Recent collapse, maybe 5 years old. Among the fallen timbers and rock, I could see bones, a skull, shreds of clothing with a company logo I recognized, a surveying firm from Scranton. "The mine is alive," the youngest child said. Couldn't have been more than 7 when she died. "It breathes. It moves. It's been drinking the river water for 60 years, growing, spreading under the whole city. We're not just in the old coal mines anymore. We're in something else. Something the mine became." I knelt down, pretending to adjust my equipment, really trying to calm my racing heart. My radio crackled. "Mike, you've been down there 40 minutes. Status check." Before I could answer, one of the children touched my arm. The contact was cold, wet, but gentle. Please don't call them. They'll make you leave. They always do. And we'll be alone again, in the dark, forever. I looked at their faces. Dead children. Drowned children. Children who'd worked illegally in dangerous conditions because their families were desperate. Children who died and been forgotten. Their bodies never recovered. Their names never added to the disaster memorial. They deserved better. I'll try, I said finally. I'll try to lead you out. But if the mine starts collapsing, if it gets dangerous, you have to let me save myself. Understood? They nodded eagerly. Too eagerly. And I realized they'd probably said the same thing to the surveyor whose bones lay in the collapsed tunnel. But I was committed now. I started walking back the way I'd come, following my scanner's route to the exit. The children followed in a tight group, holding hands like they'd held hands when they drowned. For the first 100 feet, everything was normal. The tunnel was exactly as I'd mapped it. Then I noticed something wrong. The handprints on the walls, they were different, fresh, being made as I watched. Small hands pressing into the coal dust, creating new patterns, new arrows. But these arrows pointed away from the exit, deeper into the mine. It's starting, the oldest boy said quietly. The mine knows. It's trying to confuse you. Don't follow the handprints. Trust your machine. I focused on my scanner. The route was clear. But the tunnel ahead was changing. I could see it happening. Timbers shifting, walls narrowing, new passages opening where there had been solid rock. The mine was rearranging itself. Keep walking, the girl encouraged. Don't stop. Don't look at the changes. They're not real. Not for you. You're alive. You can walk through them. I did. I walked forward, even as the tunnel seemed to close in front of me, even as walls appeared to shift and block my path. And she was right. When I reached what looked like a solid wall, my hand passed through it. Illusion. The mine was showing me what it wanted me to see, trying to trap me, trying to make me another lost soul wandering its depths forever. But the children held hands tighter, and their presence seemed to anchor reality somewhat. As long as I stayed close to them, I could distinguish between what was real and what was the mine's deception. We were halfway to the exit when I heard it. A sound like breathing. Not the children's breathing. The mine itself. The walls expanded and contracted rhythmically. And with each breath, water began seeping through the rock. Not dripping. Seeping. Like the mine was sweating. Or bleeding water. It's angry, the youngest child whispered. It's going to flood again. Like it did to us. The water rose fast, ankle deep within seconds. The children didn't seem affected. They were already drowned. What did water matter? But I was very much alive, and very much in danger of drowning in an abandoned mine tunnel. Run, I shouted, and we ran. The children kept pace with me effortlessly, their wet footsteps echoing mine. The water climbed to my knees, my waist. The tunnel was flooding impossibly fast, physics-defying fast. This wasn't real water. This was memory water. The mine was replaying 1959, trying to make me part of that disaster. Don't breathe it, the boy shouted. If you breathe the memory water, you'll drown in the past. You'll become like us. I held my breath as the water reached my chest. My equipment was ruined, my scanner dead, but I could see light ahead. The ventilation shaft, the rope, freedom. The children saw it too, and their expressions turned from hopeful to terrified. We can't, the girl sobbed. We can't go into the light. It burns. It remembers that we're dead. The water was at my neck. I had seconds. I grabbed the rope with one hand and reached back with the other. Take my hand, all of you. Maybe if you're touching me, touching something alive. The oldest boy grabbed my hand. The cold was shocking, bone deep, death cold. But he held on, and the next child grabbed his hand, and the chain formed again. All 12 children connected through me to something living, to something that could still leave. I pulled myself up the rope, the children's weight somehow both there and not there, like pulling up shadows. The water chased us, climbing the shaft, defying gravity. The mine was making one last attempt to keep us all. My arms screamed, my lungs burned, but I climbed. Halfway up the shaft, I made the mistake of looking down. The water below wasn't water anymore. It was faces, hundreds of faces. All the miners who died in these tunnels over 150 years of operation. All the people the mine had claimed. And they were reaching up, trying to pull the children back, trying to pull me down to join them. "Don't look," the girl shouted. "Look up, only up." I focused on the circle of daylight above. So close. My arms were giving out. The children's hands were slipping. They were becoming less solid, harder to hold on to. The living world was rejecting them. 20 feet, 10 feet, 5 feet. I burst out of the shaft into brilliant afternoon sunlight, and the children came with me, for just a moment. For one beautiful, impossible moment. 12 dead children stood in the sunshine, eyes wide with wonder, faces turned up to a sky they hadn't seen in 64 years. Then the light became too much. They started to fade, not violently, gently, like morning fog burning away. "Thank you," the girl said as she faded. "Thank you for trying, for seeing us, for remembering we existed." "Wait," I gasped. "What are your names? I'll tell people. I'll make sure you're remembered properly." The oldest boy smiled, already half gone. "Thomas Kowalski, Catherine Morrison, James Chen." He listed all 12 names as they disappeared. I wrote them in the dirt with my finger, desperate not to forget. Tell them we weren't afraid at the end. Tell them we held hands. They were gone. The mine shaft was just a shaft again. The water was gone. My ruined equipment lay scattered around me. Janet and the safety team rushed over, asking if I was okay, what happened, why I'd been down so long. I told them everything. They didn't believe me, of course. Hallucinations from bad air, they said. Stress, isolation. But I had the names. I researched every single one. 12 children, all from Pittston mining families, all reported missing between January 15th and January 22nd, 1959. Never found. Their disappearances attributed to them running away or being kidnapped. No connection to the Knox mine disaster was ever made official. I contacted their descendants, the few I could find, told them what I'd experienced. Some believed, most didn't. But together, we erected a small memorial at the mine site. 12 names. 12 children who worked illegally, died secretly, and deserved to be remembered. I never went back into the Pittston mines. The city ended up filling in that section rather than trying to survey it further. Too unstable, they said. Too dangerous. But I know the real reason. The mine was alive. It fed on tragedy. And it's still down there beneath the city, breathing, waiting, collecting the lost and the forgotten. Sometimes I wake up at night, feeling cold wetness on my hand. And I hear them singing again, that old mining song, echoing up from deep beneath the earth. But now the song sounds different. Not trapped, not desperate, just remembering. Holding hands in the dark and remembering that once someone tried to lead them home. My name is Sarah Chen, and I'm a freelance photographer. In February 2020, I was hired to cover Groundhog Day in Punxsutawney for a lifestyle magazine, one of those quirky Americana pieces that editors love. I'd been to Punxsutawney before, but never during the festival. I expected crowds, local color, maybe some decent shots of Punxsutawney Phil. What I got was something that still makes me check every photograph I take, searching for a face that shouldn't be there. I arrived 2 days before Groundhog Day to scout locations and capture the town preparing for its annual moment of fame. Punxsutawney is small, about 6,000 people, and the whole place transforms into a carnival in early February. I checked into a bed and breakfast on Mahoning Street, run by an elderly woman named Mrs. Kowalski. Sweet lady. But when I mentioned I'd be photographing around town, especially at night, she gave me an odd look. "Just be careful where you point that camera," she said. "Some things don't like having their picture taken." I laughed it off as local superstition and headed out with my camera. The first day went smoothly. I captured the town square being decorated, local volunteers setting up the stage for Phil's big moment, children excited about the festivities. Standard stuff. But as evening approached and the crowds thinned, I noticed something odd in my viewfinder. There was a man standing at the edge of nearly every frame, not doing anything suspicious, just standing there, watching. He wore an old-fashioned suit, dark gray, that looked like it belonged in a 1940s photograph. His face was pale, almost luminescent in the fading light. And he was smiling. Not a friendly smile. The kind of smile that's too wide, showing too many teeth, held too long. At first, I assumed he was a local eccentric, maybe someone playing a character for the tourists. But when I lowered my camera to look at him directly, he wasn't there. I'd raise the camera again, and there he'd be in the frame, still smiling, closer than before. This happened 4 times before the sun fully set. Each time, he was closer. Each time, that smile grew wider. That night, I reviewed my photos at the B&B. The smiling man, that's what I'd started calling him in my head, appeared in 17 shots. In every single one, he was looking directly at the camera, directly at me. I zoomed in on his face, and that's when I noticed his eyes. They were completely black. No iris, no white. Just solid black orbs that somehow still conveyed intense focus. Mrs. Kowalski knocked on my door around 10 p.m., bringing tea. She saw the photos on my laptop screen and went rigid. "You saw him," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. "Who is he?" I asked. She sat down heavily, her hands shaking as she set the teacup down. "We don't talk about him. Not during Groundhog Day. He's been appearing in photographs since the 1960s, always during the festival, always watching. 20 years ago, a tourist tried to approach him, walked right up to where he stood in her camera frame. But when she got there, nothing. Just empty air. She lowered her camera, and he was standing directly behind her. The screaming brought half the town running. What happened to her? Mrs. Kowalski's face went pale. They found her 3 days later, up in the woods north of town. Still alive, still smiling, couldn't stop smiling. Her face was locked in that expression, muscles frozen. She died in the hospital that way. I should have left, should have packed my equipment and driven back to Philadelphia that night. But I'm stubborn, and I'd been paid half up front. I convinced myself Mrs. Kowalski was just feeding me local legends to make the town more interesting. The next morning, I went back out. Groundhog Day itself was a madhouse. Thousands of people, television crews, the whole spectacle. I worked the crowd, getting shots of Phil's handlers, the ceremony, tourists bundled against the cold. I forgot about the smiling man until I was reviewing shots on my camera's display during a lull. He was in every single photograph. Not at the edges now. Right in the middle of the crowd, that same 1940s suit, that same impossible smile. But now his head was tilted at an angle that made my stomach clench. Tilted too far, like his neck was broken. And in each subsequent photo, he was closer to the camera, closer to me. I spun around, scanning the crowd with my naked eye. Nothing. Just normal people celebrating, laughing, drinking hot chocolate. I raised my camera again and looked through the viewfinder. There he was, 10 feet away now. His smile had grown so wide it seemed to split his face, and he was holding something, a photograph. He turned it to face the camera, and I saw what it showed. Me, taking a picture. But the angle was wrong. This photo was taken from behind me, very close behind me. I lowered the camera with shaking hands. My skin crawled with the sensation of being watched. I didn't dare look through the viewfinder again. Instead, I made my way through the crowd toward my car, pushing past celebrating tourists who had no idea what I'd seen, what was seeing me. Back at the B&B, I started packing. Mrs. Kowalski found me throwing clothes into my suitcase. "He showed you the photograph, didn't he?" she asked softly. I nodded, unable to speak. "Then you can't leave," she said, and her voice was thick with sympathy. "Not yet. If you run now, he'll follow. He'll appear in every photograph you take for the rest of your life. Every reflection, every mirror, every piece of glass. And he'll get closer each time until eventually..." She didn't finish. "What do I do?" My voice came out as a whisper. "There's one way to break his attention. The old Punxsutawney Phil statue. The original one, not the new tourist version. It's in the woods, where the groundhog burrow used to be before they moved the ceremony downtown. You have to go there tonight. Take his photograph at the statue. But you can only take one shot, and you have to let him have it." Mrs. Kowalski drew me a map to the old statue location. It was 3 miles outside town, up a logging road that hadn't been maintained in decades. She also gave me something else, an old Polaroid camera. "Digital won't work," she explained. "He exists in the space between lens and sensor. In the fraction of a second it takes light to become image. Instant film traps him differently. One shot. Let the picture develop, then leave it at the statue's base. Don't look at it. Don't touch it once it's developed. Just walk away." I left at midnight, when the festival crowds had finally dispersed. The logging road was barely visible, overgrown and icy. My car struggled up the incline, headlights cutting through bare trees that seemed to lean inward, watching. After 2 miles, the road became impassable. I continued on foot, using my phone's flashlight to follow Mrs. Kowalski's map. The woods were absolutely silent. No wind, no animals, nothing. Just my footsteps crunching through old snow and my own ragged breathing. Then I heard it. Someone walking behind me, matching my pace exactly. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I walked faster. So did they. I refused to turn around, refused to shine my light behind me, because I knew what I'd see. The statue stood in a small clearing, covered in frost and forgotten. It was crude, carved from local stone sometime in the early 1900s. A groundhog sitting upright, worn smooth by weather and time. Around its base, someone had left offerings. Old photographs, all curled and yellowed with age. I picked one up before I could stop myself. It showed a man from the 1970s, judging by his clothes. He was standing in front of this same statue, smiling normally for what looked like a vacation photo. But behind him, barely visible in the shadows, stood the smiling man, and the tourist's shadow on the ground was wrong. It didn't match his body position. It matched the smiling man's posture exactly. I dropped the photograph and stepped back, right into something solid, something that shouldn't have been there. I felt breath on my neck, cold, smelling of old earth and darker things. A voice whispered directly into my ear, and though I'd never heard it before, I somehow knew it had been speaking to people for decades. You take so many pictures, capturing moments, stealing them. Did you ever wonder what you steal them from? I spun around, raising the Polaroid camera instinctively. He stood 3 feet away, close enough to touch, the smiling man. His face was even worse in person, if person was the right word. That smile literally split his face from ear to ear, showing teeth that went back too far into his head. His black eyes reflected nothing, absorbed all light. The 1940s suit hung on a frame that was too tall, too thin, wrong proportions everywhere. "One picture," I gasped. That's what she said. One picture. His smile somehow widened further, and I heard the wet sound of tearing skin at the corners of his mouth. He nodded slowly, that broken neck tilt making the gesture obscene. I raised the camera with trembling hands. Through the viewfinder, he looked even worse, more solid, more real than anything else in the frame. I pressed the shutter. The flash was blinding in the darkness. The camera whirred, and the photograph began to slide out. "Don't look at it," I whispered to myself, Mrs. Kowalski's warning echoing in my mind. "Just put it down and walk away." But the smiling man reached out with fingers that were too long, too many joints in each one. He plucked the developing photograph from my hand with surprising gentleness. He held the photograph up, watching it develop with those dead black eyes. And as the image materialized, something impossible happened. He began to fade, not disappearing, transferring. The more solid his image became in the photograph, the more transparent he became in reality. I could see through him now, see the trees behind his form. But his voice remained, whispering from everywhere and nowhere. "You understand now? Every photograph, every captured moment. You trap a piece of the world in time. But time is my realm. The space between seconds, the pause between heartbeats. I am what lives in that frozen moment. And now you've given me what I wanted. Permission, acknowledgement, a willing photograph." The photograph finished developing in his hands. In it, I could see him perfectly, but I could also see myself reflected in his black eyes, reflected in every photograph I'd ever taken, would ever take. He was part of my vision now, part of how I saw the world. "I'll be there," he whispered, "in every shadow, every reflection, every frame, not to harm you, to watch you, to document you. Fair trade, photographer. You capture the world, and I capture you." He faded completely, leaving only the photograph floating in the air for a moment before it fell to the snow. I ran. Didn't stop running until I reached my car, drove until I was back in Philadelphia. I quit the assignment, told the magazine I'd gotten sick. But Mrs. Kowalski was wrong about one thing. Leaving the photograph didn't break his attention. He's still there, in my photographs. Not everyone, just enough to remind me. A figure at the edge of a wedding photo, a reflection in a storefront window, a shadow that doesn't match its source, always smiling, always watching. But here's what really terrifies me. I've started appearing in other people's photographs. Pictures taken by strangers, posted online. I'll be scrolling through social media and see myself in the background of someone's vacation photo. Someone I've never met, in places I've never been, And standing next to me, barely visible, is the smiling man. He's not just watching me anymore. He's showing me to others, making me part of his collection, making me like him, an uninvited presence in captured moments, appearing where I shouldn't be, with that same impossible smile slowly spreading across my face. I can feel it happening. My face hurts, my cheeks ache. And when I look in the mirror, which I try not to do, my smile is getting wider, much wider than it should. The space between moments is larger than we think, and something lives there. Something that smiles while it watches us all. 7 stories. 7 Pennsylvania small towns. 7 truths that most people will never believe, hidden beneath the surface of places that look peaceful, normal, safe. But now you know. You know about Centralia's breathing basement and the ancient thing that waits beneath the coal fire. You know about Punxsutawney's smiling man, trapped in photographs, spreading his endless grin. You know about Shepherdstown's collective, merging flesh and consciousness into something that wants to spread beyond one small town. You know about Bradford County's breathing house, learning to inhale through the living. You know about Carbondale Hospital's endless fire, replaying death in smoke and flame. You know about Jim Thorpe's watchers, living and dead, standing guard at the thin places. And you know about Pittston's tunnel children, still holding hands in the darkness, waiting for someone to remember their names. These aren't legends. These are warnings. Pennsylvania's small towns carry secrets in their foundations, in their histories, in the very earth they're built upon. And if you ever find yourself in one of these places, if you hear something strange or see something impossible, remember, the most disturbing horrors are the ones that are real. Thank you for listening. Stay safe. Stay aware. And if you're ever in a small Pennsylvania town and something feels wrong, trust that feeling. This was Dark Fears.